Hey guys, my name is Discourse and welcome to another video about the Batman Matrix game. So today we're going to talk about the top 3 Batman cards, according to me. So the first thing to acknowledge is that when we're talking about Batman, we're not really just talking about Batman, right? We're talking about the Batman crew and the ways that you can build a Batman crew. As far as I'm concerned, this is my opinion, but I believe that there's 2 archetypal styles of a Batman list. So the first style is the Bat Family style of list. This will tend to consist of a few miniatures, maybe 4 or 5 models. They will be costumed vigilantes and they will tend to hit hard. They'll be worth a lot of reputation. You won't have access to a lot of henchmen. So we're looking at a list here that consists of maybe a Batwoman, a Batman, a Batgirl, Oracle, maybe the odd GCPD officer, but mostly Robins, Nightwings, Red Hoods, characters like that. So these characters are very strong models. They are able to pack a lot of punch. They're able to do a lot in their single activation, which is good because you need them to do a lot in their activations because you're only going to have about 4 or 5 models, right? So because of that, you're going to build your crew deck in a very certain specific type of way. You're going to use your crew deck to take advantage of your ability to fight. However, there's the other style of the Batman crew. This is perhaps a more traditional style of Batman crew. It reflects the type of crew that the Back to Gotham starter set has, for example. So this second style of Batman list will be a very GCPD heavy list, and it will look very different from that first style that we talked about earlier. This will have a lot of GCPD police officers, so it will consist of a lot of henchmen. It will have a lot more activations, and the actual activations that it does have will tend to be a little bit less swingy than those activations from the Bat Family style. But that's fine, because you've got so many models, you're going to get a lot of actions out of this type of crew. You're going to want a lot of manipulate actions, for example. So you'll want to be taking advantage of the inspire trait on your leader as much as possible. So you'll be outfitting people with radios, or you'll just be keeping them around your boss. So this GCPD style of Batman crew, it doesn't excel at fighting people. It might have a Batman model who is really good at fighting, but aside from that character who really will be acting more like a disruptor to your opponent, you're mostly going to be placing suspect markers down, you're going to be revealing enemy suspect markers down, and that's going to be the main way that you score your deck. And to be honest, that's great because the Batman crew deck really does enable that style of gameplay. So it's this latter style, this GCPD style of Batman crew deck that I'm going to be focused on today when I tell you my top 3 Batman cards. I will cover the other style of Batman crew, the Bat Family style, whenever I talk about some of the teams, because really, that crew deck style has a lot of similarities to the Bat Family team style. Obviously, I'm talking about these 2 crews, these archetypes of a Batman crew in very stark terms. I'm contrasting them against one another. But in actual play, that's probably not going to be the case. There's going to be a little bit more mix and match. You can definitely build a Batman crew that takes the best of both worlds, right? But even in that best of both worlds, I'll say that these top 3 cards that I'm choosing right now, they're probably going to be the same cards that you're going to want to slot into that mixed style of Batman crew. So the first card that I'm going to talk about is actually not in the top 3. It's going to be my honorable mention. So this is the card that almost got into the top 3, and it was actually a really hard choice I had to make. So the card I'm talking about is Comb Through Everything, and this was neck and neck with my choice for number 3. So Comb Through Everything is a superb card. It's very easy to score. All it requires is that you reveal an enemy suspect marker, and more than that, it also comes with an additional upside. By scoring it, you get to draw an extra card, and therefore choose which card you wish to keep between the 2. So that's obviously great, right? Now, the reason why it didn't make it into my top 3 cards is because it can be held somewhat hostage by your opponent. And what I mean by that is that if your opponent isn't placing down suspect markers, you simply can't score this card. Now, usually your opponent's going to be placing down suspect markers, right? So in practice, this isn't a huge downside, but it is a downside, right? Unfortunately, that's all it takes. It's dropped it down out of the top 3 because of that reason. That's why it's not number 3, number 2, or number 1. But it's still a really great card, and let's be honest, you're probably going to want to bring this card into most Batman lists. Okay, so that brings us then to card number 3, which is going to be non-lethal ammo. So the first really good thing about this card is that I want to say it's only upside. And what I mean by that is that this card is essentially an equipment item you would pay funding for if you could. So the scoring requirements for this card are that you need to inflict damage with a ranged attack, but you get to change all of the blood markers that you would have dealt with that weapon to stun markers. So you might be thinking that you'd prefer to be dealing blood damage rather than stun damage, right? As a general rule. But that's not the case for the Batman crew. The Batman crew actually really thrives off of dealing stun damage. And if you remember what we said earlier about this GCPD style of list, it has a lot of cops, right? And it's not able to deal a lot of damage. Well, this card allows you to double down on a very specific form of damage, which is always going to be better than just simply mixing it up as a general principle. So what's really nice about this card is that it enhances the sort of standard pistol stats, and this standard gun profile tends to be a rate of fire of 3 or 4 with a single blood stun for the damage profile. This card then allows you to convert that blood in the blood stun damage profile into another stun, so that means that this gun will now look like a rate of fire 3 or 4 with double stun. That's great. That's much better than the standard gun profile. So you're going to shoot someone with this gun, you're going to knock them out, and then later on you're going to walk over and you're going to use a special action to arrest them with your arrest keyword, because you've got a lot of cops. And that's the primary way that you're going to be making casualties in any case in a GCPD heavy list. You'll tend to simply be knocking people out and arresting them. So this card plays really well into that playstyle. And we mentioned earlier on that the police tend to have a very hard time actually fighting, so this actually enhances their combat ability. It allows them to a little bit of disruption to the opponent's models and plans. Now, obviously, not everyone's going to be able to score the non-lethal ammo card. You are going to need to bring henchmen that have access to a gun that deals some amount of blood damage. So, for example, Officer Merkel won't be able to score this card. But the fact is that some of the better henchmen for the GCPD will be able to score this card. So, if you bring Detective Bullock, if you bring the GCPD generic detective, or even Larita, they can all make use of this card. Now, Larita maybe a little bit less, just because you do want to probably use his really good damage profile as blood damage. But a lot of really good henchmen for the GCPD can score this card. And then, not to mention, this card also sets you up to score other cards that are in your crew deck that you'll really want to score. It gives you 2 points for scoring it, so it's just great, really. Now, the resource is just okay on this. It gives you cover, but it has some very specific requirements to actually make use of it. Now, luckily, it does cost 0, so if you happen to not have any models that can actually score this card, you can cycle it out of your hand, but the resource is certainly nothing to write home about. So that's number 3, non-lethal ammo. Okay, and now we're going to go into number 2, and number 2 is get them off the streets. So get them off the streets has a very simple scoring requirement. All you need to do is arrest an enemy model, which is great, right? Because if you've brought a lot of cops, then you're going to have really easy access to the arrest keyword. So in a lot of ways, this card essentially reads, make a special action, score 3 points. And it does score you 3 points, which is just superb. It will help you get the edge over other crews, which can be really important whenever you're facing someone like the Joker, who's going to score a lot of cards. So you're often going to want to arrest a model as the GCPD list anyway, because it's the only way that you can guarantee that enemy models won't be able to activate next round if they're KO. And it's very easy for a GCPD list to arrest. They have a lot of support for that, like the 70 reputation Commissioner Gordon model that lets them arrest as a free action. Then you combine this card with the non-lethal ammo card that we discussed previously, and you've got a really good recipe for some nice synergetic play with your crew deck. So this card is just great. It allows you to score points for removing opponent's models, which is always excellent because you've not only weakened your opponent, but you've also scored a lot of points off the back of doing so, which is a really lovely combination. And then that's all before we discuss the resource on this card. And the resource on this card is absolutely incredible. It's one of the best in the game. It allows you to cancel an enemy objective card used as a resource. This is amazing. So this is essentially the exhaustive planner trait, but in a card form. There's plenty of crews out there that will pay good reputation in order to bring a miniature with the exhaustive planner trait. As a Batman crew, you simply get access to it very easily. You just take this card. Now, obviously it costs a bit of resources, but who cares whenever the effect is this good? Now, in terms of downsides for this card, obviously you're going to come across some crews that it's going to be harder to score this in than others. If you're coming up against very strong teams, then you might have a little bit of difficulty knocking them out. But for the vast majority of crews, you're going to be coming up against quite a lot of henchmen, and henchmen are always great for knocking out and arresting. So that's my number 2, that's get them off the streets. Okay, and now we're on to my number 1, the best card in the Batman crew deck, and of course, it's going to be Snitch. Of course it is. I think a lot of people probably saw this coming. Snitch is one of the potentially best cards in the game. So what makes Snitch so good? Well, first of all, it scores you 3 points if you score it, and second of all, it's extremely easy to score. It's even easier than get them off the streets. So in order to score this card, all you need to do is place a suspect marker and then designate that as a Snitch. Then it gains the attributes that it cannot be revealed or removed this round, and you score this card if there are no enemy suspect markers within 4 inches of the Snitch marker. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're playing a GCPD heavy list, you're going to want to make a lot of manipulate actions anyway, and you're going to be under the Inspire radius a lot with your radio equipment that you'll have easy access to. You're going to have a lot of henchmen who'll be able to make use of the fact that they're under the Inspire bubble, and so they're going to be getting a lot of free manipulate actions. And all this card needs you to do is to make a single manipulate action, throw down a suspect marker, and away you go. And at that stage, it'll really be up to your opponent to try and prevent you from scoring it, so you can bait them into making some pretty poor moves. So one of the really unsung strengths of this card is that it's actually a very flexible card. So for example, if your opponent has a lot of board control and you're feeling under a lot of pressure, you can simply hold this card in your your hand and then throw it out on your very final activation and still then hopefully score it. Or alternatively, if you really do have a lot of board control yourself and you don't feel under any pressure whatsoever, you can simply throw this out and get another card into your hand. And it's typically very easy to judge whether or not you think your opponent will be able to actually prevent you from scoring this card. So just make sure you don't place it around any sewer markers. And then the hidden keyword that Detective Bullock comes with, and the GCPD Detective as well, that allows them to be placed in deployment anywhere on the map, will really help you place this in hard to reach areas. Now, the resource isn't really anything to write home about. It simply gives you a little bit of extra defense, and it does cost 0, so you can get this card out of your hand relatively easily if necessary. You won't be constrained by your resources, but honestly 9 times out of 10 you're just going to want to use this to score 3 points off of, and if you don't, you're going to want to hold it in your hand to play it next round. So wow, what a great card, right? What a great card. And the Batman crew really does have access to these really nice cards. These 3-point scorers just overall are just so good. So that's my 3 top Batman cards. We have Snitch in number 1, we have Get Them Off the Streets in number 2, and of course we have Non-Lethal Ammo in number 3. And again, I must stress, this is for a very GCPD heavy list, so you're going to have easy access to the rest keyword, you're going to have a lot of guns, and of course you're going to have a lot of manipulate actions. So you can see these top 3 cards, they all play very much into that style of play. Obviously with a Bat Family style of list, you're going to have a very different set of crew cards, right? So that will be a separate list that I will do at a separate stage. So what do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree with my assessment? Please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear whether or not you guys think that Snitch doesn't deserve of the number 1 rank, and I'd really love to hear your reasons for that. If you have any stories about how you have been able to prevent this type of card from scoring, or if you have any stories about why these cards maybe don't work as well as I've said in this video, please let me know in the comments below. I'd be really interested in hearing those. And again, as always, please do like and subscribe if you do enjoy this content. It helps the channel out a lot. I want to thank everybody who's been supporting us so far. It's been a really fun journey with you guys. So again, just a lot of thanks to everyone who supported the channel. So let me know what your favorite Batman cards are in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.